Welcome to New West Press Audio, the official podcast of New West Press. We're an independent publishing outfit located in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. My name is Matt Bose. I'm the general manager here. With me today is Margie Taylor, author of the new book, Rose Addams. How are you today, Margie?
I'm very well, Matt. How are you?
Can't complain.
Good.
We are starting to get the spring 23 titles out there. And I think yours turned out pretty nicely.
I'm so pleased. I have to say, I love the cover. I love the cover. And for once in my life, I let the designers and the publicist and the publisher make a decision about the cover because
Yeah.
you people are the ones who know what you're doing. And I'll tell you something, for the people who've ordered the book so far, the first thing everybody says is, "Oh, I love the cover. I love the cover." So I'm
Yeah, we've
really,
had lots of pre-orders on this one. It's actually really doing well off of our
oh,
website. Where
oh,
if
that's
you're
good.
listening and haven't bought it yet, I suggest you go click the link in the show notes. You can go buy one too and keep up.
Great.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm very
yeah.
happy.
The cover is by Michelle Vrana, and it's got a woman. Can we see her back? And she's walking, and there's a bunch of kind of plants and flowers and stuff around her. And I think it's a good representation of sort of the chaos that the main character finds herself in. But
Okay.
do you want to kind of lay out the story for our listeners?
Sure, I'd love to, Matt. This story, I've said this a couple of times. I think I said it in the introduction as well to the book, that it's the first story I've ever written, or the first book I've ever written with a particular audience in mind. I was writing for people in my state of mind, my situation to some extent. I'm writing for people who sort of, we've raised our kids. We think that, okay, there's no more surprises. We've done the hard work. I'm one of those people who used to think if you raised your kids till they were 18, then you were done. Well, no, but that's okay. And you kind of think everything is set, no surprises. And of course, guess what? There's a lot of surprises.
Mhm.
So I had an idea of a character. Rose, the name Rose came to me, Rose Addams with two D's. Somehow it had to be with two D's. And I just decided I wanted to write about her. It was the beginning of COVID. I, like most people, was not, I teach EAL during the week, but I couldn't do it face to face anymore. And I hadn't really started doing it online. And I needed a project. So I started writing about Rose, and I just let her take me where she was going to take me. And she did. For better or for worse, she did.
Mhm. Yeah, it's we were throwing around some taglines for some kind of advertising and placements we're hoping to do for the book, and we were looking at it compared to another Vancouver book from last year, Francis Peck's The Broken Places, which is about a
Mhm.
family kind of separated by the big earthquake, the big one that hits Vancouver. And I came up with the idea that, well, that's like a physical disaster movie. This is more of an emotional disaster movie because many things happened to Rose and her family over the course of what, it's not a long time.
It's not a long time. It actually starts just before Labor Day in 2019.
Mhm.
And it finishes just towards the end of November, middle to end of
Mhm.
November. So it's a short period of time. There's a lot of flashbacks
Yep.
as to, Rose's life in that. But just briefly, so Rose has been married for almost 40 years. She has a daughter who's working on her PhD in Toronto. She has a son who's a lawyer living in Vancouver. Rose and her husband live in North Vancouver. So it's very much placed in an area that I know. We lived in
Mhm.
North Van, in the 80s. My kids were born here, and I'm back in this area again. And she has a very good friend named Marie, who's a writer of children's fiction, a very successful writer of children's fiction. And Marie and Rose spend a lot of time going through, what's happening in their lives. She also has a mutual friend named Garnet, who's actually a friend of her husband's,
Mhm.
who gets himself into a bit of a situation with a much younger woman. And Rose has somebody appear out of her past Can I say who that is? Can I get into all those details or leave it? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably comes up in the part you're reading too, or at least, you
actually,
know,
I don't know that he doesn't come up in the part I'm reading, but
it's
I'll just
pretty
make,
early on though. Yeah,
yeah,
like
early on, she is accosted, I guess you could say, by a homeless young man that she's seen frequently in front of the grocery store where she shops. And
yeah,
it turns out that she actually has a connection with this young man, and he becomes involved with her life. And the girlfriend, Garnet's girlfriend, becomes involved, and kind of everybody is doing things, and things get all torn up, and stuff happens with her daughter that she wasn't expecting. And one of the things I found interesting, because I wrote this when I was working with the Coquitlam Writers Group, and we would meet once a week on Zoom and read a chapter or read what we had written. And I found it interesting that although I felt I was writing from the point of view of Rose, who is just turned 60, but not only did it seem to resonate with women and men in the group who were that age, also the ones who said, oh my gosh, that's just like my mom. I've had that kind of argument with my mom. I can't believe, that she said that. So the relationship, I think, between Rose and her daughter also plays out as well.
yeah,
So hopefully people will find it engaging.
yeah. I mean, your mothers and daughters, that's a pretty eternal thing. And, her son, he's not in it as much, but he does factor into it. And this young man that she meets kind of, fills a role as well. So this is kind of leading to another question I was going to ask. With this cast of characters, are any of them sort of based on people you know? My favorite's Garnet. I think he's very funny, and I think he's pretty full of himself. But
He's
it's
very
fun to
full.
see.
Yeah.
It's fun to see a character
That's
like that sort of get pulled down a little bit. So yeah,
Garnet.
are these based on
Yeah.
anybody?
Garnet isn't based on anyone in particular, but when I was writing Garnet, I kept thinking about some of the English and history profs I'd had when I was back in university.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago, but they were very much the kind of pipe smoking, leather patch on the elbows types, and
Yeah,
the English profs especially had to always let you know that Garnet can't open his mouth without quoting Shakespeare.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
quite pompous that way. He's lovable, I think, in his own way,
Mm-hmm.
but he is very much full of being an English professor at a university.
He's
So
playing the role.
he's playing the role. I guess, to be honest, the person with the closest to a character in my own life would be Charles, Rose's husband. Now, my husband, unfortunately, died in 2016, but we were together for 40 years, and we do have a daughter and a son together. Now, there are other people, my husband we also have stepkids and all the rest of it. There are other people that I didn't put into the book, but there are, especially I would have to say, with the character of Morgan, Rose's daughter, mothers and daughters. We love each other to bits, but there are moments of great tension, especially if the daughter thinks that the mother is trying to get her to do something or change her life or impact. It doesn't work. And I think why Jason, the son, why his role is sort of smoother, not quite as involved, is that, mothers love their sons too, but they're kinder with them. They have different expectations. I'm speaking from my own experience. I probably shouldn't say that's weighted with everybody. But certainly in my case, I just sort of felt things were always easier with my son and love them both to bits. But yeah, I would say that the four main characters, Rose and Charles and the daughter and son, certainly come from my own experience, if not being completely based on our family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And like mothers kind of remember themselves at the age of their daughters and are probably more in an argument with themselves at that age rather than their own actual kids. So yeah,
and you don't want them to make the same mistakes. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah, exactly.
You see your daughter going in a certain direction and you remember yourself at that age and think, I did this, but I shouldn't have, and now I've learned, and I don't want her to do that too. And we do have a tendency to forget, and Rose especially has a tendency to forget that people need to work out their own, I'll say, crap. Okay. They need to work their own stuff out. And Rose is accused a couple of times by her husband and by her daughter of being a bit of a nosy mate. She sticks her
Yes.
oar where she probably shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
she definitely does. But
Yeah.
I think that's kind of important for like the forward momentum of the story, because you can't really rely on the characters to all just come out and say like, here's all my problems. You kind of need Rose to go in there and needle them a little bit.
Yeah.
And it is sort of endearing, but also a little bit annoying of a character too. Like,
yes.
You everyone knows someone like that who always wants to know your business. So does that come with being a fiction writer? Do you do that to people?
I have a
you reach into them. Yeah.
I have a tendency to want to get the story out of everyone.
And you were a journalist too, so.
No, I was a journalist for 30 years. That's true. So that's probably part of it. But I do remember, even when I was a kid, I took the bus a lot. We didn't have a car when I was growing up in Northern Ontario. I would spend a lot of time on the bus, and I used to like to sit there and then figure out the story of the people on the bus. Hopefully without staring at them too obviously. But I would do it there, and I would also do it in restaurants. I love being in a restaurant. Some people don't want to be seated next to other people. I love being seated next to other people so I can listen in on the conversation and work out, what's the story here? What exactly is going on? So, and I have to say, I've learned over the years, it hasn't changed me, but I have learned that I'm a bit nosy when it comes to my kids and people close to me. I try not to push with friends, and I do get prickly if people push with me because I get it. But I'm certainly not what you'd call a hands-off mom. That's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, and you definitely can't say that about Rose either.
You can't say about Rose.
Yeah. So you've got a section from the book primed for us to read. Why don't you set that up for the listeners?
I will do that for sure. I thought it would be easiest to just read the first chapter to you. I will mention that for those of you, I have friends who feel very strongly about which voice the book is written in. And I actually write the first chapter in the present tense, and then the rest of the book is written in the past. So I want to put that out there for people who listen, perhaps a little critically, which is fine. So I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to read the first chapter. This is how
that's what it's for. Yeah, that's the first chapter. That's what you do.
Right. Yeah. Here we go. The guy is still there, hunched on the sidewalk a few feet from the entrance to the store. Dark hoodie, torn jeans, cardboard sign with "Homeless, please give" written in crayon. Rose does give when she has spare change, which isn't as often as it used to be, because really, who carries cash anymore? He never looks up, but he acknowledges contributions by nodding and pressing his hands together in thanks. Namaste. She likes that. It's what her yoga teacher always said at the end of a class. Rose assumed it meant thanks, but it means more than that. According to Wikipedia, it means "I bow to the divine in you," which is nice. She puts the car into reverse gear and wonders if she should give Charles a call before setting off, let him know she's on her way. He likes to be kept in the loop. Charles is her husband of 4 decades, 40 years exactly next May. He is her friend, her defender, and her support system, and when she's not wanting to strangle him, she admires his spirited approach to life and his sense of humor. She might have done so much worse. She'd never tell him that, of course, but she often thinks it. Backing out of her parking space, she makes sure to check behind her for stray shopping carts. He's still there, the homeless guy. The first time he said namaste, she wanted to ask if he did yoga, but most likely he just picked it up somewhere and liked the sound of it. Homeless people don't do yoga, do they? Where would they do it? And yoga lessons cost the earth. Morgan takes them 3 times a week at some studio in Toronto. $20 a pop, if you can believe it. Still, if it helps her focus on her studies, it's probably worth it. And Ian is paying for it, she says. Ian, oh, now there's a lovely man, and such a good family. Not rich or anything like that, just good, solid people who put their efforts into raising a good, solid son. Sad when you think of it, the difference good parenting makes. There's Ian, Morgan's fiancé, graduating with distinction from Brown, practically running a film company. And there's that poor young man standing outside a grocery store, relying on the kindness of strangers. A drug addict, probably. A lifetime of poor choices learned from parents who made equally poor choices. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He'd do better if he smiled, made eye contact, even said good morning. It's hard to ignore someone when they smile at you and say hello, which is all they can do these days. They aren't allowed to ask you directly for money. When did that change? Must have been a bylaw that came into effect and she wasn't paying attention. This guy, anyway, and the one who isn't the one, rather, who followed her home the other week. That one panhandles outside the liquor store at the village, a short walk from their house. He came right to her door and knocked and asked for a handout, if you can believe it. How did he even find her? She gave him $10 and a peanut butter sandwich, and he left. So far, he hasn't come back. The blast of a car horn directly behind her prompts her to slam down on the brake pedal. She checks her rearview mirror, makes the nod and hands together prayer gesture to the driver of an SUV backing up behind her. Sorry, my bad. The driver, a young guy in sunglasses and a beanie, doesn't notice. He has his speakers on maximum volume. Even with the window closed, the boom, boom, boom is deafening. It's a miracle there aren't more accidents in these lots. People coming and going, no rules about whose turn it is. The polite ones wait till the coast is clear, but nobody is polite anymore. We've become a nation of pushy, entitled road hogs demanding the right of the way. And it's all the fault of the internet. Another toot from yet another car, this one coming towards her and cutting into the space beside her. What the hell? When did the simple act of leaving a shopping mall turn into an exercise in military withdrawal? Half these drivers shouldn't be on the road, of course. Too old, too preoccupied. This time it's the other driver, a woman, giving the apologetic smile. Okay, so it was her fault. And she's sorry. There, you see, Rose? Not everybody's an idiot. Feeling better, she shifts into drive and creeps out of the lot, casting a final glance in the direction of the homeless guy. Oh no, is that a dog with him? Has he adopted a dog? She hates when homeless guys have dogs. She gets it, of course. They need company just like anyone else. But dogs are domesticated. They're pets. They're not used to living in the wild. And the streets of this city are as wild as you get. The Wild West, that's where we're at. Bang, bang, my baby shot me down. I fought the law. You don't hear a lot of songs about guns anymore. There used to be tons. I shot the sheriff. Don't take your guns to town. Happiness is a warm gun. Well, that probably doesn't count. The Beatles were being ironic. And now John and George are dead. And Paul's got to be, what, 103? Is Ringo still alive? They're all dying. All our heroes. Who's the one who died last week? Somebody she really likes. Oh my God, Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. What did she die of? Cancer? She'll Google it when she gets home. If she gets home, the traffic is ridiculous. Roadworks everywhere and something going on up ahead, an accident or something. Blue flashing lights and cars merging into a single lane. She has a sudden urge to check her phone. No reason to. It hasn't buzzed or beeped or anything, and she isn't expecting a call. It's just that she hasn't checked it since leaving the store, and maybe she should call Charles. And now that traffic has come to a halt, it just feels right to pick up her phone and check it out. She won't. It's against the law, but she really, really wants to. It's an addiction. There was a psychology professor being interviewed on the radio, and he said it's like gambling, and it's at least partly responsible for an increase in suicide rates among teens. Thank God there were no cell phones around when her kids were in their teens. No social media, none of that stuff. It must be hell raising teenagers these days. She can't even imagine. Just as the traffic ahead of her begins to move, her phone rings. Carefully, keeping her eyes on the road, she feels for her phone and puts it on speaker. Hello? Mom? Hey, hon, how are you? Where are you? Are you in the car? You shouldn't answer the phone if you're in the car. It's okay, I've got it on speaker and the car is barely moving. How are you? Are you at school? You know, it's a big fine if they catch you. It's like $540. Yes, I know. And 4 demerit points. Why don't you connect it to your car? Jason can show you. He did it for Dad, right? Got Bluetooth installed. You should get him to do it for you. I don't want it, Rose says. I don't want people calling me when I'm driving. Then why pick up? It's a reasonable question, but it only serves to irritate her. Is that why you called? To lecture me about the phone? No, I want to talk to you about the wedding. The wedding. Rose has been wanting to talk about the wedding for weeks, ever since Morgan reluctantly confided that she and the lovely Ian were getting married in December, the day after she, Morgan, completes her PhD. Don't make a big thing of it, she said at the time. It's not a big deal. We've been living together for 3 years, remember? So here's the thing. Rose is the least likely person in the world to make a big deal about her daughter's wedding. She and Charles decided on a Friday to get married the following Wednesday. They invited 20 close friends, found a Unitarian minister, and hosted a riotous night at a hotel bar in lieu of a wedding reception. It was months before it even dawned on her that they hadn't had a cake. She's hardly a bridezilla. The fact that she was delighted when Morgan dropped her bombshell over Christmas doesn't make her a monster. And it was, after all, a bombshell, Morgan being close to 40 and never once, as far as her parents knew, having shown the slightest interest in becoming a wife. At any rate, since the announcement, Morgan has clammed up like a clam. No wedding talk, no shopping for dresses, no info about who's invited or where it's taking place. It's too early, she keeps saying, which it isn't. I've got other things on my mind, which she does. She's been working on her dissertation for over 3 years and is this close to being done. And Ian is working on a film, something for Netflix, Rose thinks, although the nature of his job is a mystery. Morgan says he's an executive producer, which sounds important, but when he was visiting at Christmas, he shrugged it off. I'm the whip cracker, he said, the one everybody loves to hate. Rose can't imagine anyone hating Ian. He is possibly the kindest, most even-natured man she's ever met, and he obviously loves her daughter. Fighting the urge to grab the phone and hold it to her ear, Rose says, "That's wonderful, hon. Yes, let's talk. Have you decided on a venue? Should I come out?" There's a pause, and for a moment she thinks they've lost the connection. Then Morgan says, "I'll wait till you're out of the car. Call me, okay?" That's the end of chapter 1.
Yeah, I like how you set up a lot of Rose's assumptions that will later on be dismantled. As far as I gotta say,
Exactly.
like her opinions on homeless people, especially. Like if you only hear that part, you may not like her, but she learns a few things over the course of the story.
She has, I think Rose thinks of herself as very open-minded and very liberal in that. Gosh knows, don't we all? But of course, she makes the assumption somebody's homeless, they must be on drugs. At the very least, they must be on drugs. Yeah.
And they don't do yoga.
And they don't do yoga. How would they do yoga, Matt? Where would they do it?
Exactly. So that was a little preview of Rose Addams by Margie Taylor. Suggest you go pick a copy up. You can pre-order it off our site, or it'll be in stores and online in April, I think, right?
That's right. April 18th, I gather, or thereabouts.
Yeah, middle of April, pick her up. It's going to be, ebook versions as well. And for those of you with sight disability problems, it's a super accessible edition too. We've just upgraded our ebooks to just be like the best you could be for people with sight disabilities. So should work for anybody.
That's fantastic, Matt. And if I can also mention, too, that if they're interested, they can also go to margietaylor.com. Order the book through New West, for sure. Do you want to find out more about my little modest self? Go to my website, Margie Taylor.
There'll be a link to margietaylor.com in the show notes, too. So, check that out. But thanks for coming on the show, Margie.
Thank you, Matt, so much. It's really been a pleasure. Take care.
Yeah, and we'll see you on the next episode.